Welcome to 160 Studios, and this is all about the South Florida Medtech ecosystem. Today I've got leadership from Neocis. I've got Alon Mozes with me, and I've got Erik Beuckelaers. And now, are you COO or are you CFO? Where are you sitting these days?
I'm VP Finance and HR,
Okay.
just to be clear, titles.
I'm trying to get you a promotion here.
Yeah, nice try. So you worked this out ahead of time. Yeah.
No, yeah. I keep on referring to him that in full disclosure. And Alon, founder, president, CEO?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And you were incredibly generous. You appeared in season 2 of True Future, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and we got to expose the world, or another part of the world, to Yomi. And would you share with our viewers a little bit about Yomi and a little bit about what Neocis does?
Sure. So Neosis develops robotic surgery systems. We're focused on the dental industry. So Yomi is our system for dental implant surgery. The idea is to take haptic robotics, which is kind of an interactive robotics approach, and improve the performance for dental surgeons to allow them to plan a case ahead of time. So in software, they can upload their CT scan, their image, plan the whole case, do whatever they want virtually, and then the robot's going to assist them in actually implementing the case exactly as they planned. So it allows them to do a more minimally invasive approach, potentially, to handle some really complex cases, to get great accuracy, and to do it all potentially in the same day procedure. So it's really advantageous and exciting for us to be able to take really the first and only robot-assisted surgery system in the dental industry. Mm.
And we were chatting before we went on, and you had both shared with me you just coming off a record quarter, and you know we're in the middle of COVID, and yet the organization cranked out a record quarter. So I'm going to slide over to my finance guy now, and so tell me about that. Is that a great sales team? Is it a time is right for us? Does Yomi actually thrive in a pandemic world?
Right. All of the above, right? I do think as a company we were able to pivot really fast, right? We're not this big multinational that needs to book meeting after meeting after meeting about what's happening with COVID, how we're gonna tackle that as a leadership team. We were there right away having late meetings and so, okay, what are we doing as a company, right? So we're able to pivot away from the classic, hey, go to conferences, try to get 10 minutes, 15 minutes on a doctor's schedule. Now suddenly these doctors having a lot of time, they're not traveling to conferences, they're not seeing patients, so they have to do something. They're going nuts at home, right? So we're able to reach them much easier through just cold calling, but at the same time also like putting a lot of WebExes up and running. We were able to produce content really fast, and it really levels the playing field, right? Where in the past at conferences we're in the back, right? We cannot spend millions of dollars of getting like the front booth, the big booth, shipping in 30 sales reps, stalking people. We're still a little bit a smaller company there, but suddenly, like if you go online, there is no difference anymore, right? So we're able to reach a lot of customers. I think the participation that we had on our courses was, I think, about maybe 60-70% of what multinationals are actually bringing traffic. So suddenly us as a 70-person company are getting all that traffic. And then thanks to like being able to articulate very well our ROI on our product, we're able to actually close a lot of deals.
Yeah. The fact that we're introducing a robot to the dental suite and removing maybe that interface between doctor and patient, is that suddenly become a competitive advantage for Yomi?
Yeah, so I think the real advantage here is that we're not completely separating the dentist from the patient, right? It's an assistive device. So the dentist continues to get to be good at what they're good at, which is clinical judgment. But now they have this expert device that allows them to be good at what robots are good at, which is precision, accuracy, dexterity. So that's a real advantage for the system. It's not going to scare away patients, doesn't scare away dentists. They're still in charge from a clinical perspective. But it gives them the expertise that robotics can give.
And so I would imagine, you know, as I sit down in the chair, and we know, again, in this pandemic environment we're in, we talk about the aerosol.
Yeah.
And now you're staring. We're watching these heroes in hospitals put ventilators in and have PPE all over them. It's not much different than a dentist staring down a potential patient.
It's worse for a dentist. So there's a great New York Times infographic that had a graph that showed, you know, the risk of exposure for all the different occupations, and at the far upper right, at the greatest risk of exposure, were dentists. So they are definitely at risk on a day-to-day basis, and robotics is, if it's great at anything, it's at automation, and so that can lend itself in a COVID era where infection control becomes critical. If you really want the dentist to be able to line up the drill just right, but then take a step back when it's time for aerosolization in the spray, that's the greatest risk of the procedure, you can do that with a robot.
Yeah. And even post-COVID, that makes sense, right? Flu season. I think nobody paid attention that 40 to 60,000 people die a year in the United States during flu season. Well, the dentist at that point, she's exposing herself to potentially asymptomatic people sitting in the chair.
Constantly. We kind of see it the way they saw x-rays once upon a time, right? Once they realized how dangerous the radiation can be, they developed systems where you line up the x-ray detector and you step outside the room for the small portion of the procedure that's dangerous, you push a button and you come back. And so robotics is great at potentially aiding, you know, surgery in the same way.
Yeah, and that happens with CT scanners, the scattering on the doctors, in a cath lab, we know that.
Fluoro during a case.
Fluoro during
right?
a case, and you know, we put lead vests on, and so now we've got this, suddenly we're attuned into this potential of an issue with aerosol. So the idea around this show is exploring South Florida and building a med tech company in South Florida. I will have to say you're both pretty courageous. I don't think anybody had ever taken a dart and say, I'm going to throw it right at Dade, Palm Beach, or Broward County and put one of the most progressive surgical robots here. So one, take me through why here, and then two, what are the challenges starting there, and then we can slide into the benefits. You're leading the HR charge.
But he was a founder, so he started the story in Dade County. So
We had different paths to get here, but
right. No, I mean you started, so I'll
Sure. So, I mean, for me, I'm a Miami native. I grew up here. You know, I went away for school, worked in Silicon Valley for years, and I really wanted to come back here. It's home. There wasn't a lot going on. I managed to get a PhD at University of Miami. You know, when in doubt, always go back to grad school. It's fine. But there wasn't a lot of high tech going on. Fortunately, pretty early on, almost at the time of its founding, I got connected with Mako Surgical. So, great robotic surgery success story, based here in South Florida. Really blazed the trail and showed what could be done down here. And so we knew a lot of folks from there. My co-founder was from there, and we've been able to build a team in part from some of the ex-Mako people, but then recruiting from all over the country. We have great quality of life here. You know, I can sell it really well. It's, you know, it's better than the Bay Area. It's better than Boston, and with kind of a burgeoning tech hub, we really have an opportunity to bring the best talent to South Florida.
Yeah, and let's not glaze over Mako. That was more than successful. Share how did Mako exit, and who are they part of now for our audience?
Sure. So they were founded in about beginning of 2005.
Again, another South Florida success story.
Absolutely. So founded by another University of Miami alum and a couple of other folks who were able to basically build it from scratch here in South Florida, starting in 2005. By 2008, they had their IPO, which was great. It was during a time, 2008, nobody was going public, and they managed to have a successful IPO. And then ultimately in 2013, I had left by then, but in 2013, they were acquired by Stryker for a great price, and, you know, over $1.5 billion. So tremendous success story in robotic surgery, which at the time, you have some successes like Intuitive Surgical, but some others that didn't do so well. And so Mako showed it could be done, and it could be done in South Florida.
Yeah.
and still going strong with Stryker. If you look at their earnings releases, they're the major driver of their growth.
That's right. That's right. And there's still a major footprint down in South
Correct.
Florida. They've got a very large facility, and I think they just moved into another one in Fort Lauderdale area. Just
Yeah,
off
they
I-95.
continue to grow. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, so that's good. So now you're from Belgium originally, and then was it East Coast, then West Coast, then back to East
Well,
Coast?
a little bit more than that. It was Belgium, Holland, Ireland, Singapore, Belgium, and then I made it to the East Coast, finally, and then that's where we met in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of like the opposite, right? It's not per se like Miami attracting me, but it's also the Bay Area pushing me out, right? I think at a certain moment in time, everybody comes to a point in their career or personal life that you need to take, judgment calls. Do you want to sit and commute? Do you want to pay high taxes? You want to pay, $3-4 million for a nice house. Do you really want to go through that? Or do you want to go to an area where it's way more like, work-life balance, way friendlier, economically also to live? And, saw the position on LinkedIn, Alon posted it, applied, pushed the button, and the following day, he reaches out to me, and that's where we started the conversation. And, with my wife, she's born in Miami, grew up in Philadelphia, but there were ties for me also back to Miami.
Yeah.
And then, you do all the math, we make our spreadsheets, you start calculating, okay, make a little bit less money, but 0 state taxes. I mean, that's pretty attractive as a company and as an individual, right? And, everything is way more affordable here. So decision was made pretty fast.
Yeah, and when you take that, and you're a finance guy, I'm not, you take that down range 10 years from now, and you compound on that 401k, taxes, how much you actually taking home, appreciation, all of that, and quality of life. I do think, and listen, let me just say, I am a huge Bay Area fan to visit. If I was starting a company today, given the environment we're in, I'm not sure that I would put it in San Fran, based upon we've discovered that, I'm not going to say that a pure virtual company can do well, but I can say that in certain scenarios, being able to use partnerships and assets externally that are not necessarily in your backyard, probably everybody's envelope expanded a little further.
Absolutely, and you see that with the investors too. A lot of them are leaving the Bay Area, right? A lot of them now have offices set up in Austin. There are new tech hubs spreading out across the country. We've been able to raise funds outside of South Florida. There's a lot of things you can do still having your headquarters here in South Florida. I think there is value to having some centralized presence, especially if you're developing hardware. But a lot of the other resources can be distributed. So there's no need to pay the premium to be in the Bay Area and suffer the consequences of a lower, quality of living. Likewise with, Boston kind of quality of life. You can do that in South Florida and still have great success.
Yeah. Now you have your headquarters. I've been down there. It's awesome. It's probably one of the coolest offices and/or facilities in the medtech industry, and I've been around the world. You were in the city of Wynwood.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you take care of facilities, so.
No, I don't take care of facilities. I used to.
He does now.
This is how fluid we are.
That's
Got
right.
promoted on the spot here.
This
It comes with the CFO title. Yeah.
This is the first time they've been together in 3 months, so I feel honored that they actually got together to do this. So they're taking hazard pay for the effort here. But tell a little bit about why Wynwood.
I think Wynwood is kind of that edgy place, but also full of artists, where it's kind of like this new hub, new bubble, kind of like that's really like coming to the surface of Miami, where a lot of young people, but also just very, very creative people are coming together, right? And I do think that as a company, maybe a lot of old tech companies were a little bit more rigid, slow-paced kind of companies, very conservative. Mm-hmm. I do think that medtech, with the latest innovations, thinking beyond just the medical device, needs to become a way more creative, needs to be part of a creative environment, creative ecosystem. And especially now, given in software, like sometimes the kids coming from school are the best coders there. It's not somebody with 20, 30 years experience. Like Alon is a die-hard coder 20 years ago. I'm sure like he's going to be outcompeted by the kids coming from school. So it's very important for us to inject the company with that creativity.
Yeah, and again, it's in your hometown, so that's always helpful. What are the things, being in South Florida, that might not be obvious to the rest of the country? So I'm sitting in San Fran right now as an engineer or a marketing person, or I'm in Boston, or I'm in the Twin Cities. And so those are, if you had to pick the top 3 hubs as of today, what is it that people are not aware that support a progressive company like Neosis, where you're building a robot, and you have software, and you have major supply chain? What is it down here that people are probably making the wrong assumption on?
So I think what they're missing out on is the intellectual capital that we actually have in South Florida, right? So if you're in the Bay Area, most of your crowd is probably going to be very tech related, which may seem like a good thing, but I think there's a lot of value to the diversity of culture, just the serendipity that happens when you're building a new company and you have top-notch medical community here, financial, legal communities here, international business runs through South Florida. So there's so many other advantageous areas that you get from South Florida that you may not get in kind of a one-note town like the Bay Area, which is fantastic for technology, but does it really have all this opportunity and the quality of life and cost of living I think, similarly with Boston, Minnesota, Austin, some of those areas are already saturated. Maybe not to the degree of the Bay Area, but Miami, you have an opportunity to build on what is already a great foundation. And so I think that is often underappreciated about what's available here.
Yeah.
Over here, you can still be a trailblazer. Try to do that in Silicon Valley. You had to be there in the 70s, the 80s, Hewlett Packards, the Intels, and things like that. Those were the trailblazers, right? Now, lived in Bay Area, it's a great place to be. You breathe in innovation, but there's so many companies there, right?
Yeah.
To get noticed over there, if you're really good talent, to get noticed over there by the right company, it's very difficult,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point.
Over here, yes, there are a few companies, but you rise to the top right away. And I think for young people who want to build their career and invest in their career, I think it's better to be in a place like South Florida than it is to in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and so you're not native here. When people think of Miami, they immediately cut to South Beach. Well, that's a great feature of South Florida. It's really a very small percentage of the lifestyle here. You're here now, how long, a year and a half?
2 years.
2 years now.
Yeah.
What is it that, and I know you had some roots down there, your wife has roots down here in Delray, I think. What is it about South Florida that you still in the first year and a half had those aha moments, whether it's horses in a pasture or cattle or cool, quiet beaches,
Right.
What were they?
Yeah, I tell people it's the opposite of Silicon Valley, right? Silicon Valley, when I arrived there right away, I was like, oh, I love this place, but talk to me 6 months later, I hated the place because of all the downside I mentioned. Florida really grows onto you, right? It's less obvious, like you think about the South Beaches. But once you start looking at that life quality, just being outside, there's a big restaurant scene, a big bar scene outside of South Beach, all the beaches. Easy, just I'm a big biker, so just jump on your bike. You can easily also go for a run. They're very nice neighborhoods that you cannot find in the Bay Area. And then, of course, if you start comparing with Boston and Minnesota, yeah, let's talk in December again, right? I won't survive there. I'm Belgian. I love the rain, but the cold, no way.
Oh.
I would not survive there. So I do think that also Florida offers quite a bit of upside versus those places.
We do our best recruiting in February. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's so easy.
It is. And then let's talk about diversity. You've got diversity here of culture, diversity of thought, diversity of gender, choices across the board. We've got Wilton Manors, right? We've got South Beach. We've got Wynwood. We've got so many different sort of vibes you can drive in and out of and immerse yourself in that and then go someplace else. Then you start to head west in South Florida, and it's a different vibe, right? And some people out there, 5 acres, right? No zoning laws. You can have horses. Where did you grow up out exactly?
So technically, I actually grew up in South Beach, right? So I didn't go clubbing at all. I went to Miami Beach High School.
Well, you got a PhD. PhDs don't go clubbing. You
Yeah,
study.
I was a dork for sure.
You listen to Taylor Swift. I'm going to cut to that
I
on the
knew
edit.
you were going to bring that back. I knew it. But realistically, there's so much more to South Florida than South Beach, right? And with the diversity that you're talking about, it's also political diversity. We're a purple state, and South Florida is very mixed, and that leads to diversity of thought, which I really believe leads to better companies, better ideas. And so that really helps us grow the company in ways that I don't think you can do in other cities.
That's a really good point I had not thought of. Is most of the states that I recruit out of and into, it's one color or the other in regards to the political choices. And the blend down here is very interesting, and it's even Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. You slide up and down it.
Yep.
And you don't see, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, you don't see quite the civil unrest down here that you see in other major metro areas at scale. And I think it's because they're listening better, perhaps. They're open to the conversations. I've noticed that, but I've never thought about it from which way we're leaning politically.
There's a heavy infusion of different cultures, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even a first generation here, right? Like my kids will be first generation, right? But it's a lot of families come from Latin America, come from Europe, and it's just that different mindset of creating that new melting pot that the US was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. That is actually Miami in kind of like like in a very micro kind of way, right? It's that infusion of different diversity of thought that kind of like opens people's minds, and you talk about it.
Yeah.
You don't have per se have to revolt anymore because people think differently, right? And that makes it interesting. At work, I feel also when worked at J&J, you had to be very careful what you talk about, right? Whether it's politics, religion, race, and things like that. And it almost becomes counterproductive that you're not allowed to talk about it. You need to talk about it, and I feel that at Neosis or just in Miami in general, there's way more openness to talk about it. Of course, always with respect.
Sure.
But you have to talk about it, and if legal and HR start taking over and saying like you cannot mention these things, that when you have to conduct interviews, that you get a questionnaire in front of you, that's like stick with these questions, otherwise we get in trouble. That's where the problems start.
Yeah,
right?
I tend
and
to
that's
agree
not how
with that.
diversity works.
Yeah, that's not how it works, right? That's an auditing approach instead of an open discussion approach. And we certainly need more open discussions and listening right now. And that's a great point with South Florida is there's very few natives here. Yeah. Most people, so there's nothing to like put a flag in the ground and defend. It's the Central America, South America, Europeans, Northeasterners, Midwesterners. Yeah. It's a lot of Bay Area people moving here now. I will tell you the calls I get into our office for that. So it's super interesting. So, is there anything we didn't talk about in regards to South Florida or Neosis in particular that we should have covered?
Camilla Cabello lives in Miami now with Shawn Mendes.
Oh, I had no idea.
Taylor
I'm
Swift doesn't
strictly
live
with
here.
Taylor Swift.
I think even Ariana Grande was born in South Florida.
That's true.
Just
right?
saying, like,
Yeah.
I still love Taylor Swift, but
You know a lot about all these people.
exactly.
He's very groovy. Are you still riding your scooter
Why do you
around?
think I want to work for this guy? No, we actually moved away, right? So we moved to Miami Shores.
Oh, you did?
So it's not that much of a scooter difference,
Right.
a distance anymore, but fortunately, but.
I was worried about you having this mammoth of a man driving around on this scooter at 40 miles an hour. We had those conversations. It's quite a sight, yeah.
Those days are over.
All right. I'm happy about that. And everybody's family is doing well?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all working from home. All our marriages are surviving.
Yeah, amazing.
As far as we know, for the whole company, it's been interesting to see how some people deal very well with it and actually become more productive. Yeah. They get less disturbed and they can focus, where other ones are, suffer from less social contact. And I kind of sometimes make statements. It's like, I think that the American workspace, or just in general, the global workspace is made for extroverts, where it's all about communication, and introverts are just put in a corner and they it's not made for them because you have to do presentations, you have to sit in meetings. This is the workplace for the introverts, where suddenly a lot of these barriers are taken away. And I think it becomes a way more blended workspace where everybody's talent can more rise to the top, actually, with really introverts are being actually way more empowered now.
Wow, that's a really, really insightful thought. I hadn't really given that much deep
because you're an extrovert. We're introverts.
I know.
We'll rise to the top again.
That's why you're not rushing. So I don't want to go out that. What have you done as leadership? Anything unique? How do you stay connected to your people? Do you plan on potentially changing workflow if we do define another side in the next few months?
It's interesting. It's been an evolution, right? We kind of got hit mid-March and realized things are going to change dramatically. We went immediately into everybody working remotely, kind of slowly brought in just a handful of people into the office who absolutely needed to be there with hands-on hardware. Now we're probably about 50% of the people are in the office. If you can work remotely and be productive, which a lot of our folks can, they continue to do so. Long term, I mean, if you look at some of the other companies, Yahoo's, Google's, they had remote policies that they pulled back because productivity wasn't quite at the same level. But we've been, in some cases, like some of our software team have been remote forever, and it works well. So where you can be productive and efficient, I think it makes sense to keep being remote, and maybe we're going to discover there are some roles that we didn't have remote before that maybe can be remote and be effective. But it's constantly evaluating how good we are at continuing to be remote.
Yeah. Did it change your thoughts as a leader?
It definitely did. I think we always had these more flexible policies about working from home and working remotely and things like that. But you only start living it and really thinking about it when you actually do it yourself. Like I hated working from home and things like that, and it's just like I was able to bring way more structure into life, whereas you come early and stay late in the office. Now it's like, hey, every day at 6, I can actually spin for 45 minutes and actually work on my physique and then log on again. But it's way more structured, way more predictable, right? So it definitely opened up my mind actually that as long as you know how to deal with it, you can actually be way more productive. Now again, it's probably not a solution for everybody, right? It depends on personality, depends where you live, because like if you live in an apartment or a condo building with noisy neighbors or parties happening all the time because of Airbnb guests in Miami Beach, it might not serve you well, right? Yeah. And so you still need to have that spot where people can come together. But that opens the discussion, like how do you construct that place, right? Is that still with everybody with their own desk? Is that more fluid spaces? Are there other ways of working together? And that's where we need to keep evolving. And we'll definitely have this discussion over the following months as we, more people come back to the office. As we keep growing, we need to rediscuss everything.
Right. And next time you come down, I asked you for the Yomi van yesterday, but it was out somewhere on the road.
Yeah, it's demoing. We're too busy.
Huh?
I know that's a good thing, but we got to get a shot of the Yomi van.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just miss one tooth, and we'll bring the van to you.
Another week at home with my wife, I might be. Listen, gents, I appreciate you taking time out and coming up here to Delray to share. As always, I appreciate our relationship.
Mm-hmm. It's our pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
This has been Joe Mullings with 160 Studios, the South Florida Medtech scene. Be well.